Star Wars only, I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
The big news for this week was that Bob Iger, the former CEO of Disney, which is going to take some getting used to on saying, has officially been replaced by another Bob, a man named Bob Chapek, who I believe before this was the chairman of Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products, and I think he was there since probably 2018. Now, what's going to happen is that the CEO transitioning process, it was effective immediately, but Iger is still going to stay on Disney as the creative executive until 2021, and that's mostly him having control over films, and he's going to be teaching Bob Chapek kind of the ropes as time goes on and give him some guidance until he leaves the company in 2021. And the big question for us Star Wars fans is, how is this going to affect Star Wars? How is this going to affect the franchise going forward? In terms of park experiences, like Galaxy's Edge, it may change things maybe a lot differently than how Iger would have done it, because Chapek is not known quite fondly among the Disney park enthusiast community and just people who are Disney fanatics and big fans of the parks. They don't really like him. The reason being is because he's great for business in terms of cutting cost and maximizing profits in any way he can, which, hey, looking at it from a business perspective, he's done great. I believe since 2016 to, or maybe it was 2018 to 2020, he brought up the revenue source for, I think, up to 18, maybe 16% over the course of a few years, which is great for business. But as fans of the parks, people call him Cheapek because he cuts cost. Galaxy's Edge was originally supposed to be a lot more immersive, and you're supposed to have more people interacting with you when you walk through Batuu, and I believe there's supposed to be like flying drones of like X-Wings and maybe TIE Fighters, something really cool like that. Well, due to entertainment cuts is what they call them, Bob Chapek cut the cost on that stuff, and really went bare bone on what is to be offered over there at the parks. So he's one of those guys that I look at as a good choice for the business aspect of the future of Disney and the company being ran, but I don't think he's great for creativity, originality, and storytelling that you can have. You look at something like Epcot, which is having a big remodeling right now. When that comes back up, it's mostly going to be focused on characters, the Disney characters that we've already kind of known and seen before, instead of what I thought Epcot was originally supposed to be, kind of like a land of the future and dealing with multiple cultures around the world and different countries and all that. It's now turning into another generic Disney theme park, and this largely has to do with Chapek being very different in terms of creative ideas on what to do with the parks. So I understand being very cautious and not entirely happy with him becoming CEO of Disney. This did seem a little sudden, but not entirely, because we all knew Bob Iger was going to leave in 2021. And before this announcement, I would ask myself, I'd say, well, there's going to be a lot that changes in Star Wars in 2021, because in December, Bob Iger would have gone away as the CEO, and we would have someone new. In September, though, is when Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, her contract would end in September of 2021 because she got a 3-year extension in 2018. Well, now people will assume that, well, Chapek, the new CEO, is probably going to pick someone different other than Kathleen Kennedy, or maybe the same person. Maybe he'll keep her on a little longer. Well, the kind of, I don't know if you'd call it good news, but silver lining in this case is that Iger still has a huge say, because he's largely in charge of the films right now over what Chapek is doing. So that's kind of a saving grace, if you will, to know that Iger's still going to have some say, if not most of the say, on who replaces Kathleen Kennedy if she is replaced in 2021. I personally kind of doubt it, but then again, with Indiana Jones 5 coming out, I can see that being the final feather in her cap as a Lucasfilm president over the past, geez, how long has it been? 9 years, maybe a little less. Maybe, because it's not going to be 10, it'd be 10 in 2022. So yeah, I mean 9. We'll call it 9, just be nice. But still, Kathleen Kennedy may or may not leave in 2021, but that decision is going to be left up to people like Bob Iger, Alan Horn, and Alan Bergman. They're called the Allens over there in the little Disney insider world or whatever, because they run the studios. They run Walt Disney Studios, and now Bob Iger is mainly focusing on stuff like that, stuff like Marvel, stuff like Lucasfilm. And what's good about comparing Marvel to Lucasfilm in terms of what they make in movies is that Lucasfilm has a lot more freedom from Disney than Marvel has from Disney. And people give Kathleen Kennedy a lot of shit. She actually is one of the reasons for that, is that she has gone to Bob Iger in the past and said, hey, this isn't Marvel, we can't do a film every year. And after the Solo debacle, and I think even after The Last Jedi, she came up to Bob Iger and told him, we need to take a break. We need a movie hiatus for the Star Wars films to actually plan things out better and not rush them, because that's a big thing that happened when Disney bought Lucasfilm, is that Iger said, we got to make our money back, so I need a film in 3 years' time, and I need another one the year after, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. So you better get on it right now, sweetheart. And it sucks because, as you can tell with the new films, some people love them, some people don't. It's one of those things where it does feel rushed, because the story didn't have a lot of time to be set up and planned out. And so that's kind of what happens when you have these business-minded decisions compared to creative originality and storytelling thoughts. And you're seeing that with Bob Chapek coming in. It's not an original, creative kind of guy. It's a business decision, which is completely fine. He's the CEO of a company. It's supposed to be business-orientated. But you also have his history of not really caring much about the guest experience at the parks, mostly just caring about cutting cost and maximizing profits, which as a business you want to do. You want to make those stockholders happy, your shareholders. You want them to be happy, and you want to make money in the long run. But the only way you can truly keep your audience entertained is if you're having original content, if you're being creative with your storytelling. And I think that Chapek may not be that guy. But it is kind of nice, being Star Wars fans, looking at this from that perspective, saying, well, Lucasfilm has a lot of freedom from Disney on what they can and can't do. They still, of course, report to Disney, like people like Alan Bergman and Alan Horn, and say, hey, we're planning on doing this Mandalorian show, or we're planning on doing this Cassian Andor show. Can we get the funds for it? What do you think? And they're like, that's not a bad idea. Go ahead. They don't step on their toes too much, and that's because Kathleen Kennedy has said, we need freedom, we need room to breathe from Disney. And Disney, someone like Bob Iger, who was CEO, would say, yeah, Star Wars is different. Star Wars isn't Marvel. We're not going to have the Disney logo at the beginning of the films because we want it to feel authentically Star Wars. And I respect that. I respect the kind of movements they have. But it will be an interesting turn of events to see what happens in 2021 when Kathleen Kennedy's contract ends. Because if Bob Iger leaves before, maybe he can give a letter of recommendation on who should be next, or if she should extend her contract, or maybe he has no say. Maybe it's up to people like the Allens, Alan Bergman and Alan Horn, who go to Bob Chapek and say, well, we need someone new for Lucasfilm president. Who should it be? Because I'm not entirely sure how close someone like Jon Favreau is with Bob Chapek, because Favreau works with the studios. He doesn't work with the parks. So I don't really think Chapek would know him all that well. But Iger, of course, would know him. He has history in the film industry. He has a history in mainly the TV business. So that's kind of where I think if anyone Iger recommends, it's likely going to be Jon Favreau. I know I'm going to hear in the comments people say Dave Filoni. Don't even comment that. You don't know anything of what you're talking about when it comes to business. This is a business. It's going to be ran like a business. Lucasfilm needs a producer as president, not some creative story guy like Filoni. And I love the guy to death, but I'd rather him stay as a creative guy. So it's one of those things where who could be the next Lucasfilm president? My bet has always been on Jon Favreau. My second bet is a lady named Michelle Rejwan. I see that more as a plausibility now than I did when Iger was president, or my bad, CEO. It just the future of Star Wars got a little more interesting. Not any room for concern, in my opinion. Maybe not at least until 2021. We'll see what happens then. That's when things will get really dicey, if you will. Like we'll see what decisions are made in terms of the executive movements. But until then, everything will be all right, because Bob Iger's still in charge, and Star Wars is still having its little hiatus. It's still kind of on a little break, and they're going to play their cards safe, because if Iger's still in charge of the studios, he's still going to have a major say on what happens with Star Wars, if not the final say. So everything should be good. I wouldn't worry too much as a Star Wars fan, but what this does mean for Star Wars is that when Kathleen Kennedy may or may not retire when her contract ends, Chapek is now going to have a larger say on what happens than he did as the person who ran the parks. So that's all that really changed, is another voice in the room. Not a great voice in my opinion, but another voice. But tell me your thoughts below. What do you guys think about Bob Chapek becoming the new CEO of Disney and replacing Bob Iger? Well, he's now the 7th CEO in Disney's history. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 10 to 15 years and how he does. Tell me your thoughts below. I'm Star Wars Only. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you all next time. May the Force be with you always.